Hey everybody, welcome back to another Iris Global Green Room podcast. It's great to have you guys, great to be back here. I know we've been doing a lot of remotes and over Skype, and I know we've switched back to doing some of the in-person, but I wanted to break all of the structure and get our next guest in, so I don't care. I don't care whether in studio or out studio. I'm really excited to have this next guest, Joshua Lewis from Remnant Radio. And some of you guys, you don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm bringing him on because I want you to know about what he's doing and his team, his friends, what they're accomplishing out in Texas. It's really encouraged my life, and I know that it's going to be a blessing to you as well. So, hey, welcome, Josh. Welcome to our little podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
Dude,
I look forward to our discussion.
Yeah, I know you. You don't know me, but I feel like I know you. I've listened to hours and hours of you and your team, and I've just been so encouraged, so edified by what you get to do. And as I was planning for guests in this season, you were on top of my list. So I reached out, man. You got back in touch. I was blown away that you would. But thanks for coming on, man.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know why people get blown away when I respond to messages. Like if they shoot me Facebook messages and email messages, or they see me working out and they're like, "Man, like I didn't think you'd talk to me." And I'm like, "Let's go outside and see my car." And they can see my van with the bumper falling off. And I'm like, "I've got YouTube views. I'm not famous. I'm not rich. I'm not spoiled." Right? Like, settle down, everybody. Okay?
No, it's. Listen, I get it. You know, I did some of Darren Wilson's movies years ago. And
sure.
You get that same thing where people feel like you're on a screen. People feel like you're not a normal person. But actually, that's one of the things I really like about what you guys do at Remnant Radio. You can tell you guys are just normal guys going deeper into the things of the Lord and asking challenging questions. So in a nutshell, for those of you watching that have no idea what we're talking about right now, fill us in on what you do, what Remnant Radio is, and what the goal is.
Okay, yeah. So in 2017, I was a youth pastor at my church in Haltom City. I'm no longer at that church, but I was there for 3 years. We started a podcast in 2017 called Remnant Radio. At that time, it was just like, hey, I want to have a bunch of my friends come on because I don't know anyone famous. Like I've got no strings, I've got no connections with somebody. Like I was just a guy, right? I think I was 27 at the time, something like that. Yeah, that sounds about right. 26, 27. And we started in an attic space at my church, right above the balcony. We had this little sound booth, and there was just a little closet back there. And I basically just set up an iPhone and a couple microphones that weren't even plugged into the phone. And that first episode was garbage, and we got like 200 views. And I was like, wow. Took hardly any prep time, and lots of people watched. For us, that was lots of people. And we're like, why not do it again? So we flipped the camera around. We started cleaning the room up. The next show was quite a bit better. 3 shows after that, we had a table that I had made, and then we started inviting guests. So I'd reach out to a pastor friend of mine. He would come on. I traveled for 3 years with an evangelist. So I was able to go to lots of different churches that had lots of different expressions. I met a lot of people through that. I started inviting them on, and we started finding our vein, right? So like it just started off like, I want to talk about theology because I get stimulated mentally, right? And spiritually for that matter. I get inspired by these guys, and I want to talk to them. So just having these guys come on the show and talking and having these kinds of theological conversations, it's been good. And as we begin to develop, as we begin to grow, we built bigger and bigger relationships. I would actually say probably because of a prophetic word, or at least the marker of this prophetic word came and said, hey, you guys are going to have favor. You're going to be blessed. But then we booked Wayne Grudem. We booked Robbie Dawkins. We got Brian Head Welch pretty on early. We got Matt Chandler. Some of these guys started coming on the show really early on. And we were still not getting a whole lot of views, right? So, last 2019, I think we had 4,000 subscribers. By the end of by 2020, I want to say we had like 10. Right now we have 40. So, I mean, the show's just kind of compounded in growth. We've been able to interview guys like N.T. Wright from an Anglican space. We've been able to interview like Todd White, not an Anglican, right? We've been able to interview Doug Wilson, who's a Presbyterian. We interviewed the guys from Apologia Studio, Jeff Durbin. He's a 1689 London Baptist guy. And I think I'm going to be on the Cultish podcast maybe in August. But we've just built really cool relationships. Talking to people, trying to get outside of our theological echo chamber, people from inside the Orthodox Christian faith, but that we strongly disagree with on many of these areas. And it's not a debate, it's just a conversation. A lot of people have articulated our show as the Christian version of Joe Rogan. So we're just trying to have conversations with people.
I love that. I love it. And you can tell you guys do such a great job. A lot of those names that you listed off are people, that I have relationships with. And I've watched many of the episodes, and Robbie Dawkins, known him for years. A lot of those guys, just been running in circles with him for years. And the way, the first time I saw your podcast, and I didn't actually realize it until I started watching a little bit more, on a regular basis, was you had Elijah Stevens. The first time he was on, I think it was the first time I caught wind of what you guys were doing. And I was walking in the hallways. We're based out here in Redding, California. I was teaching a class for BSSM. And I passed Elisha in the hallway. I was like, dude, I saw you. It was amazing. Thank you so much. That was such a needed discussion, I felt. Our culture at Iris is Heidi and Rollin are theologians. They have their doctorates in theology. Heidi got hers in 3 years from King's College in London. Like, it is something that we have a culture of as a organization, but it's not something that we talk about a lot. In fact, most people, when they think of Iris, they probably don't think theology at all. And it's something that I've stepped into more in this last season of my life. I really got convicted of my lack of going into the depth of the word and really just preaching what everybody else is saying. And so I think part of what's really attracted me to your show is I have half a cat's brain on a good day. I barely graduated high school. You guys make it so tangible and so easy to understand, even the complex things. What's your history? I think when we chatted on the phone, you said something that shocked me. I think, and maybe I misunderstood or misheard you. You don't have a formal education in theology.
No, I'm a dyslexic homeschool kid. I've got nothing, bro.
That's me. That's my life.
Yeah. So I was homeschooled. I went to like an unaccredited Bible school, right? And frankly, a lot of what I learned there, I no longer hold. There's a lot that I had to rework through, right? So like right now, I go to Baptist church, right? Like, it's a ghosty Baptist church, but it's a Baptist church, right? So like I was raised in like a classical Pentecostal, like an Assemblies of God church, and I was raised in that space and have great admiration and love for that community, and interview many of them on our show to this day, have great relationships. I've got mentors that I still call to this day that still live in that tribe, right? Yeah. But that's basically my background. The other guys that came on the show. So I've been doing this for 3 years, about 2 years. So first year I had Jeff Gray with me. Jeff left. Michael Miller moved in. Michael Miller he'd been discipled by Jack Deere and then been pastoring at the Upper Room in Dallas in the Frisco campus. He'd been with them almost from day one, right? Yeah. He came on the show. He was with us for about a year, and then he went to plant a church in Denver, Colorado. You can go check that out. That's pretty cool if you're in the Denver area. And then my buddy Michael Roundtree is the pastor of Wellspring Church here in North Richland Hills, and he was also discipled by Jack Deere. So these guys came from like that third wave John Wimber evangelical vein. I came from this like hyper, I don't say hyper charismatic, but definitely Pentecostal, and then kind of was in some of the extremely charismatic spaces, and then kind of found myself a little bit closer towards the middle. They were on that side and found themselves a little bit closer to the middle. Right. We kind of ended up in the same space, but came from different places, right? And we just thought, as a bunch of uneducated guys, like, we could probably make theology pretty palatable for people as we're coming to these conclusions and trying to sift through our experiences and sift through our own study. And then by inviting a lot of these guys on, to discuss. There's just, I don't know. There's a lot of guilt by association when you hang out with people and have conversations with them. And I hope by the end of my life that won't be the case. That evangelicalism won't eat their own.
Right. We like to do that. I've noticed. So one of the things that I really the thing that got me listening to you guys more frequently was I was writing. I wrote a paper on what is it? Apostles Today by Holly.
New Apostolic Reformation.
Yeah, I'm sorry, New Apostolic Reformation.
Yep.
And I started listening to your conversation with Holly and Douglas, and I loved the way that you navigated it. I love the way that you challenged them on some of their things, but I found that space of just being able to sit down and talk through. I didn't know what you guys believe. I still don't. I know that you're continuationists.
Sure.
I don't care, to be honest. I love brothers and sisters in Christ coming together and finding common ground. And I think that there's so much of that. Like if people look at, let's just say, the bakers on the outside, the clips that are taken on they wouldn't think that they are, some of the highest educated people, at least in theology, that in the circles that I even run in. They wouldn't think that, but if you sit down with them, begin to talk and ask questions, a lot of the things that people believe about our organization, even the charismatic movement, are not things that these guys adhere to, and I just think it's so important to have the conversation, and I just want to commend you guys because I think you do it really well.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, and it's really blessed my life, and the reason why, like I said earlier, the reason why I'm doing this is I want you guys to check it out. I feel so. I got saved in '99 in like a crazy power encounter. I was like a drug addict, goth kid. Mom got saved when I was really young, so I was around the church, Pentecostal Assemblies of God, right? And then like we got deep into the charismatic movement when I was really young, like the fringe stuff. I ran away from God. So I'm from Massachusetts originally. So there wasn't a lot of like churches doing things. And the ones that were a part of the charismatic move, they were really weird. Just kind of like these fringe groups that would meet. And so when I was 12, went away from the Lord, my parents, the only church that they could find was this Congregationalist church. Beautiful people, love them to this day, but totally rejected what my mom's and dad's experience.
Right.
So I grew up around that. I started getting like into drugs and just dark stuff. I was a goth kid. I don't want to, people know my story. But it wasn't until 1999, senior year of high school, that I had a crazy power encounter with the Lord, walked into an Assemblies of God church, maybe 60 people, and the power of God just dropped on me. And everything changed in that moment. Became a missionary, moved to Paraguay 6 months later, and started to see the miraculous, started to see God just do the most incredible things. And within a few months, I ended up in the White House of Paraguay. I prayed for a kid. He got healed, and it just led from one thing to the next. And Randy Clark heard about the testimonies, and he said, "I want you to come travel with me." So I started traveling with him, and that's when I really dove into the deep end. Right, like you get to ride shotgun with Dr. Clark around the globe at like kind of the early 2000s of the charismatic renewal movement. It was amazing, but I saw things, I heard things that I didn't fully understand. But you just go along with it, and it hasn't been until recent that I said, okay, I have to do more, especially as the Lord gives me more platform. I have to do more than just recite all the things that I've heard, or just buy into every experience that everybody's told me that they've had. And I'm hearing this a lot in our generation. And I think you said you're in your lower 30s. I'm in my upper 30s, but I'm hearing it a lot around the people that have kind of come through our generation. Do you find that your demographic is mostly like younger, trying to navigate their way through their experience and their love of the word? Or do you find it's an older group? Like, who are the people that are listening to, and what are they saying about what you guys are doing?
Yeah. So, uh, I mean, YouTube tells me my average demographic is between like the ages of 27 and like 58 or something like that. Like, and it was mostly male, and it was younger. It was like 20s, between 20s and like 40s, but then it's bumped to like late 50s, and we have lots of ladies watching the show now, and it's kind of tipped in the other direction. And I would just imagine as we have a lot of growth, there's gonna be a lot of flux in that. We get about 400,000 views in a month when we're producing the content for our show. Wow. So it's been kind of nuts. When the name Remnant started because we thought there'd be a group that just wanted more of the Spirit's power, more of God's word, and to be enlightened, that kind of thing. But what we found was like there was a remnant of people who just weren't satisfied with like the denominational answers that were just really cookie cutter.
Right.
Like, hey, I want what's your answer for this? And you kind of get this like cheap platitude, pardon the illustration, but like, hey, I've got $3 and you're telling me I have to give 30 to the ministry and I'm going to be blessed. Like, how am I supposed to make that happen? And then the response is, if it's God's will, it's his bill. And it's just like, I don't know if that's helpful. Like, Give me a theological reason. Like let me put my faith into Christ, into something that's substantive and something that's tangible, right? And in all these communities, right? And maybe that was a charismatic example, but like you can find yourself in a congregational church or a very cessationist church. I mean, I'm getting testimonies every week of cessationists who will email me and say, "Hey, man, I haven't spoken in tongues in 30 years. And I listened to that interview with Sam Storms and I realized that charismatics don't have to be brainless.
Right.
And I repented and the Spirit came in my room and I began to weep, got off my ladder from work and began to speak in tongues for the first time in 30 years. I've got cessationists sending me photos of the baby that they conceived after one of our pastor friends said, "Hey, for whatever reason, God uses me to pray for people who are infertile." Yeah. And they send me sonogram photos saying, "Thank you." We get some really cool stories that come through the pipe. And we get more than anything. We found people that are in charismatic communities that may have abusive leadership structure, that may have been practicing the gifts in a way that is not necessarily healthy or safe. And I don't mean that to so if you're listening to me and you're like, well, Josh, you're not going to beat up the whole charismatics. Like, just look at the Church of Corinth, okay?
Right.
There were the gifts of the Spirit, and Paul had to come in and say, hey, there's a better and more excellent way to do this, right? So we have charismatics coming in going, man, that's really helpful that you're helping bring some guidance and some instruction and some theological like depth to these things to give us some bumpers so that we can run safely. And then we have the cessationist community who's completely written us off and has thought, man, there's just no good continuationist answers. And we come out with a episode every single week on the gifts, right? Yeah. And it's like, this is a cessationist argument. This is why it doesn't hold up. This is how we believe this is to be practiced, and here are some abuses that we think kind of go outside of biblical prescription, right? So we'll kind of address these issues, and that's where the remnant's coming from. It's these remnants of these groups that are just like they've been displaced and hurt and wounded, or they've been displaced, hurt, and wounded, right? Like, but just from different communities, right? And it kind of feels like David's mighty men. Frankly, it's like. We're not mighty, right? We're just a bunch of displaced refugees that are like, hey, that sounds like an answer I want. Like, let's figure this out. And it's been cool. So we're very charismatic, right? I didn't mention this at the top, but we want to cover theology, church history, and the gifts of the Spirit, right? So those are the kind of topics we cover on our show. Every single week we come out with an episode on the gifts because we firmly believe in the charismatic gifts of the Spirit. We believe that they are in practice today. I'm one of the few charismatics that like. Well, I guess there's lots of charismatics that hold this position, but I'm gonna say all of them, right? Like with apostle, I'll even say there are apostles, not like the 12, but like missionaries, right? But I have no problem saying all of the gifts of the Spirit are active today. So yeah, I don't know if that clears up. You said I don't know where you're at theologically. Like, I want to say I'm pretty ghosty. Listen, I'd like to see more in my life.
I love it. I love it all, and I think as I watch you and the rest of your friends that are speaking, you can tell that the genuine desire is to just draw people closer to Jesus in any way conceivable. Do you mentioned you're seeing some cessationists, and for those who don't know what cessationism is, it's basically the teaching that the gifts ceased with the original 12 apostles. And for those of you, you said you're seeing cessationists come and say you're speaking in tongues. What's like one of the craziest things you've heard come out fruit wise of your show?
Man, that's one. I can't think of like.
It's okay. I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, yeah. I can't think of like, and then gold dust entered the room, and then like there was an angel with a scroll. Like I don't have that story. I think tongues is about the most charismatic experience testimony that I've had yet.
Yeah.
A lot of them have just been emails saying, hey, like, thank you so much for this. This is a position I used to hold.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in this position now. I had a guy say, he sent me an email today. He's one of our Patreon givers. He said he was trained in Master's Seminary. That's John MacArthur's school.
Yeah.
He's like, I was trained in this school. He said his wife got healed, but accompanying the healing, she had like a vision and like saw, like, I want to say she said saw angels. I don't want to misquote him. I read it today though.
Right.
So it helps remembering stories when you tell them over and over. So I haven't told the story. So she sees something supernatural in the midst of her healing, and it causes him to kind of like shake, like what do I believe here? And then being able to look for content online to answer some of these questions. Remnant Radio has been a good space. So we're not trying to be new and like inventing like, oh, this is theology on this gift. Like we're basically just regurgitating stuff from Wayne Grudem, Craig Keener,
right.
Dr. Michael Brown, Sam Storms, Jack Deere, like just theological voices. And most people who are watching just heard some of those voices. They go, I know one or two of those. The thing is you don't know most of those guys because they write books, and books are dying, right? Like nobody reads books anymore. So what we're trying to do is make these books accessible, bring these guys on video platforms so that people can hear theological answers that we actually have quite a bit of academic work on the gifts of the Spirit that most people don't know exists. So just trying to expose our community to that kind of content, I think it's been helpful.
Fantastic. I was looking at some of your videos today, just before, as I was getting ready, and it looks like your most popular ones are of Dr. Michael, was it Heiser? I've read a little bit of his book on the unseen realm. It's spectacular, but I found it fascinating. There's such an emphasis, at least those most viewed ones seem to be on the supernatural, the spirit realm. You've had some pretty spectacular interviews. As you look back, what's some of your favorite videos? Like if somebody was going, I want to go to YouTube and I'm going to watch it. Like, what would you say? Like, watch this one because it's really good, and then maybe this is like my favorite one that I've done.
Man, that's hard because I'm kind of a nerd. Like I think I like things that people don't typically like. I probably some of my favorite episodes have got like 1,000 views, 2,000 views on them. I did an interview with Crawford Loretz on leadership, and that man is a gem. And he just talked about holding yourself in humility. And he made a statement that I can't quote perfectly, but I've taken a nugget from that and have kind of interjected it into my life. That when I want to disagree with someone theologically and publicly, that I don't do it with scoffing. That I don't come at it like I want to mock someone for being wrong or have pride in my heart in such a way where I'm like trying to make them look little or small so I can make myself look good. But I come at it with like tears in my eyes, like Paul, and a broken heart, and be like, man, like this is not helpful, and I want to help you, and like I care for you, and like that I have prayed for the person like in depthly before I make a statement about them, before I disagree with them, before that my posture and my heart when I do, and I got that from Crawford, and that's been super fruitful. I would encourage people to do that as we live in an online space where people are just angry and they live in their own echo chamber, and literally Facebook and YouTube, all they want to do is put content in front of your eyes that you like and that you will agree with, so you'll stay on the platform longer. So we haven't really engaged critical thinking in the West, since the iPhone was invented, right? Because this is the world we live in, and really trying to listen to people of diverse opinions and diverse views is why people like Joe Rogan are popular. It's because we're trying to introduce you to people that like this. Here's different thoughts, and it's actually really interesting, and people enjoy that. So, so Crawford Loritz was good. I had a Francis Chan interview recently. I thought that was awesome.
It was spectacular.
It was so cool.
Is he not one of the coolest humans ever?
I love that guy so much. He's so cool. That was a great interview. Just because like evangelicals were like, frankly, he did say some stuff that was like, that was kind of questionable, Francis. Like you should have known evangelicals were not going to be happy about that. You should have put an airbag on that one. But still, like, he came on and explained a lot of that. Like, he explained. Anyway, he explained a lot of stuff. I thought it was cool.
It was so beautiful, dude, because it was a glimpse, and I knew this before about him, but it was really a heartfelt glimpse into like being rejected because God did something powerful in your life or in his life. And it made me so sad for him. Like he's so humble, so accessible, and he wears his heart on his sleeve. That more kind of rigidity from, I mean, the another crowd, it just leans towards those experiences, just pushing them out. And they did that with Francis, and it breaks my heart. I saw him for the first time. I met him for the first time on the stage of the Send, on the side stage. And I watched that, man. And these are where the pictures are, where you see him hugging people and I was there. I watched that happen real time, and he was just so humble the whole time. He came in just with a heart to serve and love, and it's amazing how people try to attack. You mentioned this world of YouTube and people living in their own echo chamber. How do you handle that? Because I actually don't watch a lot of stuff. I've been doing it more just because of studies and school.
Sure. But
how do you handle it? I found it fascinating that these whole entire channels live solely for the purpose of doing the opposite of what that gentleman just told you about being humble, listening to somebody else's opinion, being soft-hearted. How do you handle that? And have you had some of those guys come after you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we nobody wanted to no one made a video about Remnant Radio until we interviewed Todd White. Okay. So we were completely orthodox and safe until Todd White came on the scene. And then it was like, oh, we gotta make some videos. Which is interesting because in that interview, am I allowed to say names on here? Like, I don't want to
you can say whatever you want.
I'm not going to be weird about it because I'm not going to be mean to anybody. But so I did a video with Todd, and there is a teaching that's popular that often just gets misarticulated, right? It's not like people actually believe this. It's just that they're really bad at communicating it, frankly. And it's called kenosis, right? Mm-hmm. All Christians everywhere believe in kenosis to some level, right? That Jesus chose not to act on certain divine attributes, right? He chose not to act on his omniscience or his omnipresence when he after the incarnation, right? And then when he went to his ascension, the assumption is that he then took upon back on some of those attributes or all those attributes, et cetera, et cetera. So, and I'm doing maybe even a poor job now because I wasn't planning on talking about this. But,
no, it's fine. I have a hard time even describing it, and
Okay, so the long and the short of it, a lot of people will say Jesus came as a man, not as God, right? Mm-hmm. And that, if anyone who's read church history, anyone who's read the Apostles' Creed, or I mean, frankly, it's in the scriptures. That's not a biblical thing to say, right? Now, what people mean to say is that Jesus chose not to act on his divine attributes and rather humbled himself in the form of a servant and was empowered by the Spirit to perform mighty works, right? There's actually a video clip of Dr. Michael Brown and James White talking about this. There's a clip of it. You can find a little 7-minute clip, or you can watch the whole 30-minute, hour-long interview. And Doc Brown explains this to James, and James goes don't all Christians believe isn't that orthodox? But so that's just a normal Christian position that Jesus chose not to act on certain divine attributes. It was empowered by the Spirit. And that's what people are trying to say when they say he didn't come as God.
Right.
But we have to be careful. We really shouldn't say it that way. Anyway, Todd has a vast history of saying Jesus didn't come as God. Now what he means to say is if I'm counseling a friend and I'm their pastor, I'm like, hey man, I'm not coming to you as your pastor. I'm coming to you as your friend, right? So I'm counseling him. Anyway, I'm asking Todd, clarify this for us because people think you're a heretic, right? So just, do you mean that Jesus was always God and never stopped being God? And oh yeah, thank you. You're helping with me with my language. And yeah, that's what I meant, right? Totally. Yeah. Totally cool. And in the first, like one, it was not one of the first, it was like one of the first 200 comments, because there's a million comments on that video. A guy named Justin Peters, who's a very well-known cessationist guy, posts on there like, man, you're helping him, you're feeding him with like the right answers, like how dare you? And I responded, is that a critique or a compliment? Right? Like if he's not doing this accurately, or maybe he's complete error. Let's just pretend he absolutely believed heresy. And I gave him the right answer and he changed his mind and said, wow, thank you so much. Like that would be a compliment, right? Right. But it's like, there's like an entire community of people. And I don't think that he's like this all the time. And I don't mean to say that like him and all the cessationists, because I actually like the cessationists. There's a couple discernment ministry channels that are cessationists that I like. They've made critique videos of me that I go, that's a valid point, right? So that being said, I'm not saying all of these people are that way, but there is an attempt I see often of people wanting to find someone and say, man, that's the enemy. And I'll even misrepresent them. Right. I'll distort them. I'll make them look any way that I want to make them look, because they're the bad guy. So it doesn't matter what you do to the bad guy. It's like call someone a Nazi. Once they're a Nazi, you can punch them in the face, right? Because who wouldn't punch a Nazi? Right. So we try to discredit a person so that we can be justified in bearing false witness against them. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm not saying that Justin bore false witness. I'm just saying, like, I hear you. If that guy was wrong, or if he wasn't articulating it right, like, shouldn't we want to correct it? Like, shouldn't we want to bring clarity? So I just don't understand the complaint that we've had with a lot of these interviews, asking people to clarify things that are confusing. But we've been the heresy defenders because we're asking for clarity. Well, that's what Michael Brown. It seems like that's what Dr. Michael Brown now is like. He is like the heretic defender for a lot of the charismatic movement. He gets labeled that way. I don't see it as defense. Like, I watched that interview. I know Todd. I've known him when he had hair as long as mine. There you go. Like I lived out in Pennsylvania. I was just at his house a few months ago. I love that man. He is one of the most humble. He lives down the street from the studio, so you're gonna have to come hang out with me next time you're in the area. I would love that. He there were times we'd be traveling together, going to different places. He would lead 3 to 4 people to the Lord on our airplane. The gift that he is to the body of Christ, the encouragement that he is to those who have no education, who are just a normal person hungry for Jesus. Is he gonna get stuff wrong or not have the full depth that Justin Peters has? And by the way, I love Justin Peters. I've been watching that dude for years. I disagree on his not Strange Fire, the Cloud Without Rain stuff, a lot of it. But I think he's a very humble man that loves the Lord, and he is a brother. But it's so strange when you're looking for offense. You brought up a good point about bearing a false witness. Where do you think that line is? Because that was one of the points that I brought up in some of my research with Holly and Douglas. I'm not saying that they did, but what is that line of like, hey, you really need to go to your brother and ask them what they think before you just make that claim? Well, I mean, I make public statements all the time about people I disagree with. So you take what I'd say with a grain of salt, right? With Doug and Holly, I mean, here's my opinion. Like, I did not dislike their book. Like, I would say go read their book. Yeah. There are fair claims. If again, 40,000 foot overarching, like, there are fair statements that we can read that and go, okay, we can do better there, right? And I want to be a part of being better in that area or that area. But then there's other things like Jack Deere. Okay, so here are the statements of the NAR. What's the NAR? The NAR is a group that has apostles and prophets at the top, kind of governing top-down structures over senior pastors, and they practice like some kind of Gnostic supernatural teaching that can't be found in Scripture, right? Like, and then we can give examples, whatever. But then she listed Jack Deere as that, and I'm like, I'm actually sitting in the church that Jack used to pastor, so like, I'm asking Michael, did you guys ever have an apostle? Like, no. Right. Did you guys ever practice like courts of heaven? Did you do any kind of like no? Like, he he was a lexicographer for Dallas Theological Seminary. Like he's not not doing like you guys walk with me into the throne. Like he's not doing that, right? So it's an interesting thing. So it seems as if willing to work with people who may be doing some of those things, or working with people who are doing those things, kind of brings that kind of guilt by association. Right. And when she's looking at a movement, when Doug and Holly are looking at a movement, I think at times, again, there will be some broad brushstrokes, which I don't think their content should be thrown out because there are generous statements made that might not from the inside. We can see the difference. Right. But from an outsider looking in, trying to do their best, I can see why they would make some broad brushes like that. So there's that. Secondly, I would say that public teaching is public, right? Public prophecy is public. And we get to discern those things publicly. And discerning a teaching isn't an attack on a person, right? So let's give an example, right? So like tomorrow, if you stood up and said, hey, I have a prophecy that in 3 days aliens are going to come to Earth, right? 3 days, it doesn't happen, and I make a video and said, hey, this guy is wrong. It's a public prophecy, didn't happen, right? I'm not attacking you, right? I'm not going after your character. I'm listening to a prophetic word that didn't come about. I'm judging it and saying that didn't happen. Yeah. Right. So we did that. We did a 2020 prophecy review where for 8 hours we listened to prophecies that were given by some of the leading charismatic teachers, and we said, hey, here are all the words. And here are the ones that came about, right? So we interviewed theologians that came on the show that practiced the gifts of the Spirit. All of them charismatic, came on the show. We listened to these words and we discerned them because we wanted to teach the body how to discern. And the Bible tells us to judge these things. And if they were given in a public setting where they couldn't be judged, we should judge them in a public setting. So, and then we can do the same thing with teaching. If someone got up and said, hey, Peter wasn't married. Like if you got up and you said, hey, Peter wasn't married. And I watched a clip of you saying that. And I played it on my show and I said, hey, Bible says that Jesus healed Peter's mother-in-law. Right. Peter was married, right? So like that's that, right? That's it. Right. And I'm not attacking you, right? I'm just saying, hey, this is what the Bible says, and I disagree with that person. So there's a lot of that goes on, and I don't think that you need to send an email or a letter or pick up a phone and call someone and talk to them about like, hey, here are the things that are wrong. Now, if you're wanting to correct an individual because they're living in sin, right, absolutely give them a call. Like if you know someone and you think they're teaching error that's actually hurting people, man, give them a call, reach out to them for love for them. But there's also a flock that they're leading, right? So if someone is teaching something that's hurtful and they're leading hundreds, some of these people that we're making videos towards 900,000 views every video, and they come out with 6 videos a week, right? Right. And I would say that some of these guys are producing content that's very, very hurtful. Now, do I want to reach out to them and pray for them? Absolutely. But in the same token, does that mean that I don't produce content? Right. For the hundreds of thousands of people that I think are being hurt by this? No, I don't think that's responsible either. I think that there needs to be, on some level, a care for the flock. And a care for the person that's leading them. But again, it has a lot to do with our posture and the way our heart is. We got to speak truth. We can confront and do that in a way. And I think that's something that I want to help display amongst charismatics is to say, guys, we need to be able to speak publicly about these things without thinking that it's a Jezebel spirit or an Achan or someone who's, you're Judasing me. It's like, no, man, I just disagree. I like you. I just disagree. So we want to display that. Yeah, and I find that most people are that way until you get into like the heresy hunting, the heretic, where they're just trying to be like, you are actually not saved. And there's a lot of that out there. That's where it gets a little bit weird for me. I don't know anyone's heart. I can judge by the fruit, the outward fruit, but I don't know their heart. But yeah, anyway, I love that, Josh. I think you have such a great head on your shoulders, man. And the way that you're coming at this is really, really beautiful. I know I'm going to be a long-term listener, and I want to encourage all of our people to do the same. You got a few more minutes? Absolutely, man. I got tons of time. Okay. And just by the way, Holly and Douglas, if you are watching, they have been so amazing. I've been chatting back and forth with them. Because we brought up the apostolic, and I interviewed our leadership,
about that. And I sent them a little bit of the interview, which kind of went against, I think, their view of who we are and what we do, and they've been great. Holly's been emailing back and forth with me, and my goal is to get our leadership and Holly in a room together, or probably on Zoom right now, and have a conversation about it. Because I will say that Holly was great, and I told her who I was. I said, you probably don't think I'm doing this and with the right heart, but I am, and I'm really excited. So I do want to say that. And I loved their book. The more I studied it, the more I kind of actually see. I know people that know C. Peter Wagner, that knew him. I know people that sat under him. I know people that walked with him. I know Lance Wallno. I know, like, these are people that I've known for years. I know Bill. He texted me just last night. I was with him last night. Like, these are people that I know. I've lived with them. I've walked with them. And usually the representation is of like a fringe thing. You brought up the kenosis thing. Bill has clarified that how many times? Like, he has. Yeah,
we showed the Facebook post.
Right. Yeah. And he is still known as the heretic that preaches that. I find that if we can just have those conversations, we can work a lot of this stuff out.
And that's the thing, is like, we need to be able to say, like, with the 30 people you just brought up there, like all these guys, do I disagree with all those guys? Yeah. But do I disagree with all of, like, the Reformed Baptist guys? Mm-hmm. Like, I go to a Reformed church. I'm not Reformed. Yeah. Right. Like we've got to be able to just live in spaces where we go, man, I disagree with that, and I disagree with that, and be able to look at all of these spaces in Christendom and say, I disagree with this, I disagree with that, I think this might be dangerous, I think that might be dangerous, and go, but that's okay. Like, I think you're still a Christian brother, right? And then go, we only disqualify. I use the word heresy only when I'm saying this is someone who is outside of the Christian faith. I use that word so sparingly. I want to be very, very careful with that word. Now, am I going to look at people and be like, I don't know, like, I don't trust that guy, and like I wouldn't encourage you to go to that church, but I think he's a Christian brother. Still okay, right? Like, so yeah. I think that we need to have spaces where we can disagree, acknowledge people's Christian faith, but be careful about how quickly we're willing to label someone heretic. So right there with you on that one.
One of the guys that I've been listening to for years has been Jeff Durbin. I actually didn't know anything about his belief system or what even denominated. I just found him fascinating. The abortion stuff that he was doing or is doing. Yep. Did you watch the clip recently? And I just saw it recently. Maybe it was from a year or two ago, where he tells the story of his daughter being healed. And
it was a son who was adopted. It was a son who was adopted. His name was Augustine. I actually did a video on continuationist and cessationist. Is there even a difference anymore? From that video, from people like watching cessationists talk about prophecy and healing and divine revelation through dreams, visions, and words, and go, okay, so you want to call that a miracle instead of the gift of healing? You want to call that providence instead of prophecy, right? Okay, now it's just semantics, right? Actually, I think a lot of charismatics who see the cessationist community, people who believe the gifts have ceased, they're like, oh, they don't believe in miracles. It's like, have you met one of them? Because really, they live basically the same as we do. They use language differently often. Now there are, again, I would say, charismatic communities that are rails off, and there's huge differences between them and the conservative cessationist communities. Right. Those do look very different. But other than that, I'll watch the video.
I bawled
me too.
For a half an hour.
Me too, bro.
Like, and not that I go by my feelings, but I literally just, as I'm watching it, I just felt the presence of the Lord so close. Like it struck me. I was laying in bed watching it, and my wife was like, "Are you okay? Like, what's the matter with you?" I was like, "Healing." She's like, "You hear healing testimonies all the time." I was like, "I don't know. There's just something about all the pieces that came together, and his wife, and all just the whole thing. Like, you can't look at that and go, this is all ceased, And I find that in those conversations, hearing people talk, we have more common ground than we believe. Than most people believe we do. Dude, listen, I've taken way too much of your time. I really appreciate you coming on. what are the platforms that you're on? I know you're on YouTube. What other platforms are for people who are listening?
All the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, all the major podcasting out there, and YouTube is. I mean, we've got a Facebook page, but yeah, we don't always live stream on that. Most of our content is on YouTube. That's our primary platform. And then everything else, trickles down from there. You can basically engage with us there. If you want to reach out to us, you can hit us an email at media@theremnantradio.com. You can message us on Facebook or Instagram or anything like that. It'd be a great way to connect.
Come on. And I know that doing a little bit of media, we're always trying to figure out new things. What's next? Do you guys have any plans of stuff in the future that you want to do? Taking it on the road, whatever. Like, do you guys have any new plans?
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to do conference stuff. I mean, we don't have any invitations for it, but I'd love to go sit at conferences and interview guest speakers like before they go on or after they go on and just kind of talk to them about theology and those kinds of things. I'd love to we've talked about doing a Remnant Radio roadshow. I really want to do a documentary. I've got no background in any of that. I've got a couple of cameras and stuff like that. But I really want to do a documentary on prophecy and talking about how prophecy can be super edifying, but also why people are concerned about it. And I think that when we just we show our community, look, there are some legit concerns about why people are concerned about this, and we should not ignore the danger because of the potential benefit and be like, oh, no, look at this benefit over here. Let's pretend nothing bad could ever happen. That's not great. We should examine both the good, the bad, and the ugly, and allow that to humble us and crush us a little bit and say okay, Lord, use me. But I'm also going to treat this thing as a holy, sacred thing and not play with it,
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got all kinds of things on my heart that I want to do. But yeah, nothing on the books. I mean, I got shows planned for, weeks ahead, but people can just log into the YouTube channel and find the shows that are coming up.
Darren Wilson, I don't know if you've done anything. He did Finger God, Furious Love, Father of Lights. He did all those
I'm familiar
movies.
with the name.
Darren Wilson's story about getting into the document. He was just a professor at a university, and the way the whole thing unfolded, going from not having an idea to traveling the globe and filming, capturing some of the most amazing things on film in the kind of in the charismatic world. If he can do it, anyone can do it, man.
That's right. I mean, Brandon Kimber has made some really good ones. I've seen some of the charismatic space ones. There's another guy. Elijah Stevens, who came on the show. His video called Sin Testimonies or Sin Stories or something like that. Bro, that one, talk about weeping. He sent it to me before it was published. I was watching it during our interview, or the day of our interview. I had to pull over and cry, man. Yeah. There are some stories that they'll get you in the gut. I really liked Elijah's documentary. People should go check that out.
I haven't seen it yet. I should, because we pass each other in the hallways every so often. Our office is located on the Bethel campus. Bill, this is something people don't talk about this, but Bill loves what we do. And so he just says, here, take our space. He pays for the lights. He pays for the electricity. They just go, here, he gives us their prime space just so he can support missions. And just that man he's such a gem. His heart to give is so spectacular. So that's why I say I'm not a regular teacher there. But I do go and I teach. I do a class called Supernatural Missions, and I put supernatural in front of it just because I wanted people to take it. So we we cross each other in the right. You get it, man.
Supernatural hermeneutics. Yeah.
Just missions doesn't really.
Thumbnails. That's right. Yeah.
So little strategy, but we love it, and I get to, for those people who just have this idea of what those. I get to preach the cross. I preach. Die to yourself, give your life away for the sake of the gospel, suffer if necessary. We teach all those things, and it's celebrated. So if people actually go and just get a peek, they'll see how amazing those guys are. I'm not here to defend anybody.
No, that's what I'd like to do, though. I'd love to to talk about some of these things, right? And like get it. I love roundtable stuff. Like I'd love to have all the SBC leaders that, the SBC is splitting right now, and have some of the leaders from the different sides that are splitting and why they're splitting sit in one room and talk about it. Like I want to film that, not be angry, but just be like, okay, what's your concern?
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you think you're being heard right now? And like just talk that out. And then like the same thing in the charismatic space. I'd love to have a room full of guys get together and be like, okay, people are wigging out. Like what's going on? Like, here's the claim, here's the quote. And then like, I'm just afraid that sometimes when we get into those conversations, we're like, hey, here's the quote, the person clams up and feels like they're being attacked.
Right.
Which if anyone watches our show, they'll know like, no, like this is a legit question. And I think there's a legit concern there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but I do think like a lot of these guys, have gotten into a situation, and I was mega charismatic. And I think it's a space that doesn't care about precise language. They love Jesus. They love the lost, and they want to preach the gospel. They want to get the stuff out there. And in the midst of it, it's just kind of messy because there's not precise theological language. Yeah. And I think that if we kind of get together and talk about it, I think a lot of those things just kind of work themselves out.
Yeah. I'm the type of preacher I have my foot in my mouth all the time because I externally process. Even when I preach, I'm not going off of set notes. I'm going
not a manuscript.
Yeah, and there's a place for that. There's a place for, we need those preachers. We need the ones that can speak from their heart in a moment and aren't going to be, just critiqued because they don't get something, right. And I think there's space for all of it. I think you'd be amazed at how many guys there are out there and women that I know that actually want to engage in that. Randy, Dr. Clark.
Send them my way.
Well, listen, you should get Stacey Campbell is one of the most brilliant, and she gets.
I don't know who that is.
Stop.
You'll have to send her my way. I promise you. I've never heard that name.
Okay, so.
And I'm sorry if that's offensive to people who are watching.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
I have my foot in every denomination. There are people I don't know.
No. There's so Stacey Campbell. She was early Toronto, part of the movement up there.
Oh, okay. That's probably why.
She's a prophet. People kind of, she's known probably because she shakes her head when she prophesies. She is one of the most.
Maybe I've seen that video.
You probably have. She is one of the most Bible loving history doctrinal students and who has a track record in the prophetic. Love that woman. She and because the external offends people, they just throw it all away. She's amazing. Dr. Clark, you got to get Dr. Clark on.
Yeah, we've had a 2-hour Zoom call, talking about NAR, and he said he was getting a bunch of research stuff together. We haven't interacted in that conversation yet, but we wanted to do a video on the NAR. Yeah. And I don't know, we may do it with Doug and Holly. We may do it with just Dr. Clark, kind of explaining some of the differences in the way that he sees the movement. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that one's probably coming up.
Yeah, there's so many. There's just so many. Anyone I can throw your way, you just let me know, and I'll do whatever I can. Well,
it sounds like people that I don't even know exist. So send people my way that I don't know about.
I got so many. There's so many David Wagner, one of the most humble, soft prophets I have ever met. He is.
So I know David Hogan and C. Peter Wagner.
Yeah, there's a David Wagner out there. It's an unholy combo. Okay. No, he's just one of the most gentle, pure-hearted, prophetic voices. That when my wife got stage 4 cancer, I called him up and I said, I'm about to ask you something that is unhealthy, and I should not do, but you need to tell me whether my wife's going to live or die. And he was like, and I'm admitting that that's unhealthy. And I'm admitting, but every single thing he said came to pass.
Wow.
And so Bob Hazlett, there's so many amazing, Dr. Mark Sharona.
I know that one.
Okay. There's just,
I'd like to get him on. I was interviewing Ken Fish recently, and he knows Mark. I think I might try to get his contact. Yeah.
Dr. Sharona is a baller. I can't even keep up with his the first 5 minutes of his introduction. It's just There's so many amazing people out there, and Josh, I love what you're doing, man.
Thanks,
I
man.
feel like I could sit here and talk with you all day. You actually had a good friend of mine on years ago, and his name's slipping my mind. You did one on hell with him, pastor, younger pastor,
Cooper, not
Jordan
Sutton.
Yeah, Jordan Sutton.
Jordan Sutton.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing,
That's
man.
cool.
Their whole family's just spectacular. So I can't wait for our paths to cross. I know this seems to have gotten into like a conversational ramble. I don't know if anybody's even still listening.
Love it.
But if you are, listen, go out, check out Remnant Radio, check out Josh and all of his stuff. I've just, like I've said 10 times already, it's really encouraged me. And I hope it will encourage you too. Josh, I can't wait for our paths to cross sometime in the future. I was supposed to be out there during the snowstorm, but I canceled. I was supposed. I was at
snow apocalypse.
Yeah, I was flying out that morning to go to Todd's, and I shut it down. I'm happy I did. I would have been stuck there for a little while.
Next time you're in the neighborhood, man, come on.
Yeah, that would be amazing. So yeah, bless you guys. Thank you, Josh. Anything you want to close with?
No, man, I'm good.
Okay. Well, listen, everybody. I know that this blessed you, and those of you guys who've been listening to a lot of our stuff. Sometimes it's in the latter parts of our interviews that you get to hear some funky stuff. I think you got that. I want to thank you, Josh, for taking time coming on our little Iris podcast here. And I want to thank all of you guys who are watching. Listen, if you like this, it blessed you, share it. Do all the things the young people tell you to do. Click and subscribe and do all the things. Do those things so we can bless as many people as humanly possible with this. And we will see you next time on the Iris Global Green Room podcast. Bless you guys.